Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your complex questions and dive deep into a stack of sources from, ancient texts on liberation to modern neuroscientific papers to pull out the most useful insights.
Today, we're tackling a really powerful set of interlocked questions. How does the pretty radical practice of sense restraint lead to these profound states of focus, or jhāna, and then ultimately to liberation itself, Nibbāna?
And the big one, does this whole process actually dismantle our sense of self?
That's the core of it, really.
Right. So that's our mission today, to connect this ancient idea of guarding the sense doors with the measurable physical rewiring of the brain. We've got sources spanning millennia here, discourses on the path to extinguishment, right alongside modern studies mapping brain changes for meditation.
It's all about disciplined attention as maybe the ultimate path to freedom.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We have to start with the problem, right? Why is sensory experience, which, it seems so normal, so harmless, why is it the engine of suffering that needs this kind of radical restraint?
Well, it all comes down to a concept in the ancient texts called dependent origination. It's essentially the step-by-step blueprint of how we build suffering for ourselves. And it starts, surprisingly, right at the moment of contact.
Contact. So it's not the sight itself or the sound, but our immediate reaction to it.
Precisely. The sources lay out this chain. You have the six sense fields, so eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and the mind itself processing thoughts, and they lead to contact.
Okay.
And that contact, in turn, generates feeling, which is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. But this is the critical point. That feeling immediately fuels craving.
Craving for the good feeling to last or craving for the bad feeling to go away. It's that mental hook.
It's the hook, exactly. And that craving leads directly to grasping. The texts are so clear on this. Grasping is the cause of continued existence, which is the whole cycle of suffering. Think of it like a flywheel.
A flywheel, I like that.
Yeah, the senses keep creating contact, and our grasping just keeps that wheel spinning and spinning, defining our whole reality.
So sense restraint, or guarding the sense doors, is really about interrupting that chain at the very first link. Before feeling can even, explode into full-blown craving, what does that actually look like in practice?
It's described as a really precise act of not getting caught up in the features and details of whatever you're experiencing. A sight comes, and you don't dwell on how attractive or unattractive it is. You just stop short.
That sounds incredibly difficult in today's world. We are literally trained from birth to get caught up in the details, to zoom in on the perfect photo, to analyze every single word of a text message.
And the texts are very clear about the consequences of not guarding those doors. If you leave a faculty unrestrained, say your mind just wandering to the past, the result is that these bad, unskillful qualities of covetousness and displeasure would become overwhelming.
You leave the door unlocked and trouble just walks in.
It walks right in. But, and this is the important part, successfully applying this discipline is rewarded almost immediately, even before you get into deep meditation.
Oh, really?
The sources promise that just by practicing this restraint, you start to experience an unsullied bliss inside themselves.
See, that sounds less like you're depriving yourself and more like you're creating this profound sense of inner safety.
That is the crucial insight. This restraint isn't about denial. It's about redirection. When you stop pouring all your mental energy into chasing things outside or fighting things inside, that energy and the happiness that comes with it, it's experienced inwardly.
And that's the path that ultimately leads to Nibbāna, to extinguishment. You permanently break that chain.
A complete cessation, yeah. Nibbāna is achieved by the fading away and cessation of that very same craving with nothing left over.
So how do you do that? How do you make it permanent? Is it just constant, exhausting vigilance?
It's a bit more subtle. It's a rational application of the mind, a discernment. You have to concentrate on the drawbacks of the very things that you're grasping at.
So you look at the thing that's sparking that craving, not to enjoy it, but to see how unstable it is, its impermanence. You see that if you cling to it, it's just going to change and eventually cause you pain.
Exactly. You intellectually weigh it, you see its fragility, and that clear understanding it cuts the fuel line to craving. The motivation to grasp just fades away because you've seen the long-term price.
Okay, this brings us right to the listener's core question. If the whole point is to stop craving the very bits and pieces of our experience sites, feelings, even thoughts, are we basically just dismantling the idea of me, the one who is doing all the experiencing?
Absolutely. The path to freedom requires seeing that all these components we usually identify as ourself, our
Well, they're fundamentally unreliable.
Unreliable in what way? The insight is that all these things we cling to, the eye, the ear, nose, body, the mind, they are all, as the texts say, impermanent, suffering, and perishable. They're constantly changing. They're not solid. They're prone to decay.
And if they're just unstable processes, how could they possibly add up to a solid, permanent, reliable self?
It's the only logical conclusion, really. Seeing this instability leads to a profound disillusionment. And the result of that is that you stop regarding these processes as something to hold on to. That whole habit of thinking, this is mine, I am this is myself.
Yeah.
It just dissolves.
There's an interesting analogy in the sources about this, that for a fully awakened sage, a muni, our normal language might not even be able to define their reality anymore.
Yes, because language is fundamentally dualistic. It needs a subject and an object, an I who sees and a thing that is seen. The sage has moved beyond relying on those judgments, those discriminations.
They're no longer rooted in that internal chatter that needs a permanent me to keep it going.
Exactly.
So let's shift from that realization of non-self to the training manual. The path to jhāna, this profound meditative absorption, this is where that restraint becomes hyper-focused attention.
Right. And the very first stage is achieving what's called access concentration.
Yeah.
If you're practicing mindfulness of breathing, you'll know you're getting there when the breath becomes incredibly subtle. I mean, sometimes it feels like it stops completely. It's a very calm, very light feeling.
Okay, what's the danger zone here? What's the common mistake?
The mistake is the body's impulse to go back to normal breathing. The ancient instruction is so crucial here. Do not take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Because the second you do, you weaken that fragile concentration. The insight is purely practical. When your mind is that quiet, your body just doesn't need much oxygen. So the discipline is resisting that physical impulse to reassert control over the stillness.
So you're turning down the input, you're accepting the quiet, and you're just maintaining that state.
Yeah.
But once you enter those jhāna states, where does your focus go? It can't be the breath if you can barely notice it.
The focus shifts. It shifts to a sensation known as piti, or sukha. This is the rapture or the bliss that's born from this deep seclusion. And the instruction is incredibly precise. You're not focused on where it is in the body, or how strong it is, or how long it lasts.
Okay, so what are you focusing on?
You become totally immersed in the pleasant aspect of the pleasant sensation.
Just the quality of pleasantness itself. So instead of analyzing the feeling, you're using the internal reward that arises from concentration as your new object of focus. It's like using pleasure to transcend grasping rather than getting caught up in the body or the mind.
It's the ultimate refinement. By just continually focusing on and absorbing into the pure quality of that pleasantness, the jhāna naturally deepens. And that progression is what defines the four absorptions.
Can you walk us through that transition briefly?
Sure. In the first jhāna, you still have some thinking and exploring going on, along with the rapture and bliss. But as your concentration gets stronger, you drop the thinking. That's the second jhāna. You just have the rapture and bliss.
So it gets quieter.
Much quieter. Then, for the third jhāna, you let go of the intense rapture, and you're left with this very stable, powerful bliss and equanimity. The emotional experience just calms right down.
Moving from an ecstatic high to just pure balance.
Exactly. And by the fourth jhāna, you even drop the bliss. You achieve this state of pure equanimity and mindfulness, where there's neither pleasure nor pain.
Yeah.
And for an advanced practitioner, the ultimate step from there is the cessation of perception and feeling.
Which is described as
the complete stilling of all activities, the letting go of all attachments, the ending of craving, extinguishment.
This is where it gets really fascinating for me. Because modern neuroscience is actually providing a physical map for this exact process. It's showing measurable changes in the brain that correspond to this mental refinement and the reduction of the self-view.
Yes. When a person is doing this kind of focused attention meditation, which you can see as a sustained, rational application of mind, they are strongly activating what's called the central executive network, or CEN.
And that's the brain's it's focusing muscle?
That's a great way to put it. It handles high-level cognitive and attentional control. But as the CEN ramps up, something else has to ramp down.
Which would be the network responsible for the me story.
Precisely. Over time, this sustained effort produces significant reductions in the activity and the connectivity of the default mode network, the DMN.
The DMN, that's the part of the brain that's always chattering, right? The self-talk network.
That's it. It's the brain network for self-referential thought, internal narratives, rumination, constantly planning or going over the past. It's the brain's default setting. and it's responsible for maintaining that story we call me.
So the part of the brain that's constantly going, this is mine, I am this, literally quiets down from disuse.
Mhm.
The sense of self dissolves not just as a philosophy, but neurologically.
That's the aha moment from the science. The studies show that with long-term meditation, mindfulness actually becomes the new default mode. There's a sustained reduction in DMN activity, and here's the key part. Without conscious effort, they get to a state where they can see reality as it actually is, without the perturbing veil of past or future illusion.
That feels like such a powerful validation of the ancient idea of disillusionment leading to freedom. And this neural rewiring must also translate into better emotional resilience. It connects right back to guarding against those unskillful qualities.
It does. Researchers tested experienced meditators using a pretty challenging stimulus-loaded breathing, which makes you feel like you can't get enough air. And they found that the mindfulness training significantly toned down the neural response in the right anterior insula and the anterior cingulate cortex, the ACC.
Okay, let's break this down. The insular cortex is like the brain's internal alarm system, its body scanner. It processes internal sensations and decides what's important.
And the ACC is involved in conflict monitoring, emotional regulation.
So modulating their response means the body is still getting the stress signal, the difficulty breathing, but the brain isn't hitting the panic button with the same intensity. The emotional freakout is disconnected from the sensory input.
That's right. It demonstrates this improved cognitive control, this effective processing of negative internal experience. It's the guard at the door, but on a neural level.
The guard is up. And you mentioned earlier that unsullied bliss that comes from restraint. Is there a biochemical signature for that?
There is. It
Yeah.
isn't just a subjective feeling. Advanced meditation shows measurable increases in objective blood biomarkers, specifically endocannabinoids like AEA and 2-AG, and also BDNF.
Endocannabinoids are the body's own bliss molecules, right? They reduce anxiety. And BDNF is critical for neuroplasticity. It literally helps the brain grow and rewire itself.
That's right. And on top of that, the brain's whole reward system changes. Studies suggest that dopamine tone, the background level of dopamine, is increased during these states. This shows that the disciplined, focused mind is providing its own genuine, sustainable reward. It replaces the need to constantly seek it from unstable external sources.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Since restraint it's so much more than just self-deprivation, it's precision training.
It's a rational application of the mind that fundamentally rewires how your brain perceives and responds to reality. By systematically weakening that cycle of contact, feeling, and craving, you starve the attachments that create the illusion of a permanent self. And this leads directly to psychological freedom and measurable changes in your brain.
It changes external reality from a source of endless distraction and potential suffering into, what, a neutral canvas. And that internal purity allows the mind to just function at its best.
And that transformation has to rest on a solid foundation of ethics. The texts really emphasize this. The heart's wish of an ethical person succeeds because of their purity. This entire system works because the foundation of right conduct is there to support it.
So as you think about applying this discipline to stop grasping in your own life, we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
The path to giving up the hindrances requires developing two key things: serenity and discernment. Serenity is that deep calm, like quiet attention we talked about, the ability to just settle the mind. Discernment is the clear, rational understanding of impermanence, of the drawbacks that allows craving to just cease.
So the question for you is, which of these two qualities, calm attention or clear understanding, is the most neglected tool in your own efforts to stop grasping? Something to consider until our next deep dive.